Hello, welcome. It's Abadi's Kitchen and today we're making some potato roti. For this recipe you will need 1 pound of potato, some seasonings, I will go over that shortly, and 2 cups of flour and 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder for your roti dough. Now for the seasoning for the potatoes, you could use fresh garlic and pepper or you could use garlic powder. You will also need some geera or ground cumin and salt to taste. Today I will be using powdered seasonings in my recipe because I like how it incorporates into the warm potatoes. Let's get into the cooking. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put a pot on with water on the stove to come up to a boil to boil my potatoes. Now I'm going to peel these potatoes. Now when making potato rotis, you always want to finish the stuffing first. You always want to boil and season the potatoes and allow it to cool. So my potatoes have been peeled and now I'm going to cut them into quarters. You could cut these into chunks or cubes if you like. That's your preference. And that way too it's going to boil faster, but this is how I like to do it. So these have been quartered. And I'm going to add it to the boiling water. So my water has come up to a boil and I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt in there. I'm going to add my pieces of potatoes in to boil. And because I've cut mine into quarters, it should take between 8 to 10 minutes. If you've cut yours smaller, it should be finished faster. Now you will know the potatoes are finished when you insert a fork into it and it goes all the way through, or the potato breaks apart when you insert the fork into it. You don't want it to be too soft or mushy. So while I'm waiting for the potatoes to boil, I will mix the roti dough. This way I will save some time with my dinner prep. Now I have here 2 cups of flour and 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and I have here about 3/4 cups of water. I may not need to use all. I'm just going to pour some of that into my roti. Now you want to mix this really well. You want the dough to come together in a nice semi-soft ball. I didn't need to use all of the water, and this you will monitor. Now as you can see, my flour has come together nicely into a ball. I'm going to put 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil directly onto the dough, and I'm going to knead and incorporate this oil into the roti. Now this is just to ensure that you have some nice soft potato roti. Now here, as you can see, it's come together nicely, and I'm going to flour my surface, put this out onto the surface and cover this and let it rest for about 10 minutes. The potatoes should be ready by now. I'm going to check on them and we'll come back to this shortly. So my potatoes have been strained and I'm now going to mash it with a fork. You could use a potato masher if you want, but I like to use the fork because it gets it more fine in my opinion. And you don't want this to have any lumps because you don't want to make holes in the roti. Now I'm going to be adding my powdered seasonings, and this is a personal preference. As I said, you could use fresh, and if you use fresh garlic and pepper, you want to ensure that you've mashed those really fine. You do not want any lumps in them. Now I'm going to give this a good mix. You want to keep checking for lumps. If you find any, just mash them. You want to set this aside to cool. It must be completely cool before you add it into the roti. So I'm going to put this in front of the fan to speed up that process. Our dough has had an opportunity to be resting, and now it's going to be a bit soft. There, that's nice and soft. And you don't want this dough to be too hard, nor do you want it to be too soft. So now I'm going to give this a good knead. And what you want is that you want the dough to become smooth. Lightly flour the surface if it begins to stick, or your hands. You don't want to add too much flour because it's going to make it hard, and you don't want that. So now that I've kneaded this for about a minute, I'm going to now roll this out into a log, and I'm going to divide this. And you want to make these the size of a large egg or a golf ball, no bigger, because when you add the potato stuffing in there, these are going to double in size. So my 2 cups of flour has given me six rotis, and now I'm going to take these quarters and I'm going to tuck and roll. Tuck and roll. When working with a dough, you always want to smooth it. You want to have a nice smooth ball so that it will be easier to handle. Now I'm going to flour and set that aside. Same, tuck and roll, tuck and roll, tuck and roll, and continue to do this until I've finished all of them. And I'm now going to cover these with a piece of plastic wrap or a damp paper towel. You don't want it to dry out. Now I'm going to go over to check on the stuffing. It should be cool by now. What I like to do is I like to make 6 potato balls, the same size as the roti dough or slightly smaller. So that way I have a 50-50 ratio of potato and roti. Again, you want to take a handful of potato mixture and you want to squeeze it into a nice tight ball. This is the last one, and the 1 pound of potato to the 2 cups of flour is exact. Take a dough ball and you're going to flatten it out to about 5 inches. You want it to fall over the palm of your hand. You want to flatten this equally. You don't want the middle to be too thick or too thin. You could also take a rolling pin and do this very neatly so that way it's flat. You're going to make your hand into a basket. Now you're going to take one of the potato ball and put it to sit into the roti basket. And you're going to press down, and now you're going to pull the edges of the roti and you're going to pinch it together. Now you're going to pinch this and you're going to encase that potato ball with the roti. And there, that's done. You want to seal it, flour it, and set it aside in preparation for cooking. Same, I'm going to flatten. You can use a rolling pin to do this. Take a potato ball and I'm going to press it down into the center of my roti. Pull the edges up and pinch. Here, again, it's nice and sealed. Again, flour, set aside and cover. Since you're on to the second to last or the last few, this is a good time to put on your tawa or flat pan to begin cooking the rotis. So my roti doughs have been filled and the tawa is on and we're ready to cook. A quick test. This is my way of testing, and there, my tawa is ready for the roti. So now I'm going to begin my rolling. Now you want to roll this roti out the size of your tawa or slightly smaller, and you want to be gentle with this because you don't want the potato filling to fall out. You want to roll it relatively even. The edges and the middle should be the same thickness. Now this one is finished. It's about 10 inches onto my hot tawa. And I'm going to give this 30 seconds and then I'll flip. If your tawa is too hot, turn it down. You don't want it to burn the roti. After 30 seconds, you want to flip, and you can see the color of the roti has changed. And now I'm going to lightly brush it with some vegetable oil. You could use a brush or a tissue with oil, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do the same, flip, and oil this side. And now I'm going to press the edges to ensure that they don't remain raw. I can see some golden specks there, and I'm going to remove and set aside and put the other one on to cook. So here you have it, the finished product, some lovely potato rotis. And I'm going to break into one of this so you can see what the inside looks like. There you can see it's nice and soft, it's tearing apart really easily. And because I've rolled mine out very thin, as you can see, it's very thin, but look at that. Potatoes everywhere. So guys, so there it is, potato roti for dinner today with some stew chicken. Do try this recipe. All of the ingredients and measurements will be listed in the description box below. Give it a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and thank you for spending time with us today in Abidi's kitchen.